Hey there, and welcome to the A.D.K Rock and Metal channel. And today we are going to be doing a new series where we look back at some classic albums, not necessarily like biggest albums on the world, which like you were talking about Metallica's Black Album, for instance, would be a good example. But albums that are probably massively influential, but maybe one of us doesn't know. And we've all that way. We all go away, we listen to the album. And then we come back to it. But today we are going to be looking at one of my favourite albums of all time. It is Corrosion of Conformity and their album Deliverance. And before we get started, let's get a little bit of a summary from Kirk about what this album is.
Released in 1994 via Columbia Records, Deliverance is the fourth album in the Corrosion of Conformity catalogue and the first to move away from crossover thrash into a southern rock-tinged Black Sabbath territory. Though a risk at the time, it was a commercial success. To this day, Deliverance has been certified gold in the United States for sales of 500,000 units, peaking at number 155 on the Billboard Top 200 upon the first month of its release. And a whopping 14 tracks spread over 54 minutes, it earned praise from Kerrang! Magazine and Rolling Stone, and many fans consider it to be their best work.
Okay, so let's dive into this album. Now, we could take it track by track, but what we'll actually do here is let's kind of break this into favourite songs on the album. Now, this could be both have exactly the same here, or have different. I'm going to let you go first, Kirk. What were your two favourite albums? What were your what really kind of hooked you in on this?
Yeah, so I'm going to go for track number 3, Clean My Wounds, and track number 5, Broken Man. Let me give you the reasons for that. So. Okay. Clean My Wounds.
Let me hit the toy one more time before we ride out.
The main riff, it's like a crunchy metal take on Owner of a Lonely Heart by the English prog rock band Yes, if you listen to the chords.
Okay.
But I love the fast palm muted triplets and the space in between the beats and the drum snares. Sorry, the drum snares and the chugging guitars. It must have been quite a shock to the original fan base though, because there's no trace of hardcore punk or crossover thrash in this song. They really have gone over to the other side. Although to be fair, you're not going to get a Black Sabbath album where they're playing this type of syncopated guitar. Broken Man. Clearly, in my opinion, the best song on here, the meanest song on the album. No doubt a favourite of James Hetfield when he heard this album, because we know he's a big fan. This could be a Helmet song until it reaches the chorus. And listen to the harmonising guitars light up the chorus. Superb. Pepper Keenan approaches the mic stand with more venom than in any other track, I would say here. And I spent the entire 4 minutes and 54 seconds circling my head in a slow rotation. Fucking brilliant song. What about you?
So I'm at the other end of the album, so I am kicking. One more thing I will say before I get to that, to Clean My Wounds, I do love the track, and it was the introduction for me to this album. I can't remember where I heard it. It was either on a compilation CD or something like that. You know, those CDs used to get on the front of magazines back in the day. This was on it. It was a promotional CD, and I heard this track, and it's fucking brilliant. But what I love about Clean My Wounds, although it's not in my favourite, is the fact that the verse chord progression is exactly the same as the chorus chord progression. It's just that instead of it going dun 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 dun, it's dun dun na 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 na. It's basically just opening up. I'm like, how can you have one riff and make an entire fucking song out of it that sounds so good? It's just one riff played two different ways. It's brilliant. But for me, Shelter is one of my favourites off of here. It's such a chilled out track. It's very introspective. There's a country vibe to it. Which I quite like country music when it's not like the kind of redneck hillbilly shit. It's when it's done with sincerity. And so when we did like the version of Hurt,
Johnny Cash covering
Johnny
Range,
Cash
yeah.
version of Hurt. I love that as well. But it's Shelter. Like once in a while, we'll be fools for change. Great. I mean, Pepper's vocals on it so sublimely subtle. And when you just listen to it, and you've got those lovely like weeping guitars, reminding me of like George Harrison guitar tone from the Beatles. There's some really nice work going on there. And for me, the other standout track is the final track of the album, Pearls Before Swine. That is ferocious. It's layered, it builds as well. This is a song that starts really slow with that bass, and you've got these sound effects of like like workmen and shit going on, and then it's like, what the fuck's going on? And then it's like, time has come, and it's like, what the fuck has this come from? This is heavy, it's weighty, it's slow. It reminds me of like Crowbar in its intensity, and very different. If you then take like Pearls Before Swine and then put that next to Clean My Wound, you're like, are you sure you're the same band here at the moment? Because this has got two very different vibes as far as like tracks and impacts. But it may also be the fact that because I've heard Clean My Wounds and Albatross and Heaven's Not Overflowing many times, because this is a band I've seen live multiple times, and these were staples of the live shows. Pearls Before Swine is not a song that's really been played much live. So there are certain songs on this album that gets played all the time live, and you get used to them. So it's quite nice going back to this and going, these were like things that I absolutely loved and just could easily go back to.
Yeah, can I just pick up on Pearls Before Swine? I agree. The 6 minutes flyby in this song. I was surprised when it came to the end. I was thinking, I'm only 3 minutes in. That's always a good sign. Dirty bass riff introduces the song, and the drummers just follows in the pocket, doesn't it, as well? But you're right, it's that eruption in the bridge to the darker mood of the chorus. It's almost like that Alice in Chains type vibe coming through. Excellent use of dual harmonies there. That's why. And you can feel your nostrils flaring up, because again, it's got a bit of it goes quite mean, doesn't it? It's a very muscular song at points as well, and it's easy to see why they ended the album with this composition, because its length and its willingness to break out of the verse bridge chorus mode. Ending it with some whistling at the end is a bit strange, but actually works, doesn't it? Because it's like a lullaby towards the end, isn't it, where you've had this song with really up and down dynamics. So yeah, great. I agree with you. Good way to sign off on the album.
So let's talk about the next point, which is your overall highs and lows of the album. So what really stood out, and what were the bits that you could have probably could have left out of the album, let's say, for you, Kirk?
Okay, this is probably better than words. The main riff to Broken Man. Yeah, but in my head,
punching when that kicks in.
Yeah, it's such a dirty song. It's really heavy, that, isn't it? It is quite mean. I keep using that word. So I would say there's only 3 songs on here that follow this vibe, and it comes in at track number 5, doesn't it? Fantastic riff. If I picked up a guitar now, I'd just be wanting to play this. The second thing, I like the vocal uplift in the chorus to the song 7 Days. And clearly grunge has had an influence, because let's not forget, with grunge, the quality of the vocalists, they're all iconic now, aren't they? Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, even Scott Weiland, Stone Temple Pilots, of course, Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder, all unique. And I think that he's put a lot of thought into that, Pepper Keenan, especially considering this is the first album where he really takes over the microphone. And then, I agree, you said in one of your favorite songs is track number 13, Shelter. This is one of the high points of the album. It's a surprise, it's a palate cleanser in between Shake Like You and Pearls Before Swine, and Keenan's voice aches with a rare note of melancholia. A couple of things that I think don't eventually work against them. It depends on your taste. The southern drawl of the vocals can be a bit irksome after a while, I find, even though he's clearly a good singer. And I think the album just needs more songs like Broken Man and Shake Like You. Probably 2 more of those would have really fixed this. Yeah, what about you?
So I can't really pick out anything particularly high as far as like standout tracks. We've talked about my favourite standout tracks. But as far as this is the last of their albums that felt like an album that you got more out of if you listen to it from start to finish and follow the journey of the album with the little musical interlude stuff, because you talk about the word, we talk about palate cleansers, and each of these interludes is an emotional palate cleanser. It helps you transition. Whereas if you went to the next album, or the further albums, they felt like a collection of songs. You could listen to them in any order and it made no difference. I think listening to this album in order, with the starting track of Heaven's Not Overflowing and finishing on Pearls Before Swine, is great. You've got two very different vibes of tracks to bookend the album with an emotional journey it takes you on, and I think you benefit from this. And I bought this album originally on tape when it first came out, then got CD afterwards. So the likelihood is I ended up listening to this the first few times from start to finish, with no skips. And considering I'm not a big fan of weird interlude bits and stuff like that, I love the interludes on it. However, saying that, there is the interlude called 2121313 doesn't really do anything for me as far as an interlude piece. Whereas if you compare it with the one Without Wings, Without Wings is an absolutely beautiful piece of guitar music.
Yeah.
Can sit there on its own as a piece of music, listen to it and go, do you know what, that's lovely, I really like that one. The Mono de Mono, not as strong, but nice bit of atmospheric build. 2121313, I could take it or leave it. The other weak one for me is actually the Shake Like You, because of the vocal effect. I'm not that megaphone vocal effect they kept using, that telephone fuzz.
Yeah,
it
very popular in the
oversaturates
90s,
on
wasn't
it.
it?
It's a little bit grating. I would have much rather have heard that track without that effect on it. I don't think he needed to use it. I don't see the benefit of it. I know if Andy had heard that, or Andy was here listening to it, he would definitely have been Shake Like You. What the fuck's going on with that vocal effect? Because
it almost sounds like a flanger effect, doesn't it? You're right.
Yeah.
It was really popular in the 90s. With people like Maynard James Keenan and Mike Patton used it quite extensively, didn't they? And other people copied it. But I actually did like that element. But yeah, I can see how that might be divisive. What are your thoughts on the opening song of this record? Because I think that sets the mood normally, doesn't it? What do you think of Heaven's Not Overflowing?
I mean, for heaven me, so what's really cool with this one is it's a great way to punch in that first riff, and they're like, what the fuck, that's going on here? This is great. It's actually a really good way to bring people into the album if you're into the previous album, Blind. Now, Blind had some great tracks on there, like Vote with a Bullet, but if you have the song, one of their other big songs off that album was called Dance with the Dead. Which has a similar vibe to this. So if you were, and this was, you got to remember, this album when I think they were Columbia Records, if I remember on this one, they just signed to Columbia for this album. So they'd just been picked up off of the Blind album. They were like, fucking hell, we've made it, brilliant. And then singer's gone, bass player leaves, and they're like, fuck, we're just two guitarists and a drummer at this point. And that's where these interlude songs came from. That's where songs like Shelter came from. Because they hadn't got a full band to write an album, so they started writing riffs, and so they started a lot of these things like 2121313 and Without Wings came because Pepper and Woody Weatherman would just sit there and work on bits while they were like, because they were like, shit, we've got a certain amount of period, we've got like 6 months to write this album, and we haven't got a band. So what the fuck do we do with the studio time? So they were literally just hemorrhaging studio money for Columbia with no band. They're like, fuck, we're in here. And luckily what they ended up doing is Pepper then stepped into the vocal void. Originally he was never going to be, at that album point, the main vocalist. But he stepped up into it after obviously Vote with a Bullet was such a big song, which is the one he did the vocals on off of the Blind album. And then Mike Dean came back in for bass on this album because he had done the bass not on the last album. He never did bass on Blind. I don't think he did bass on the previous one when they were more hardcore, and he'd left and they'd got another bass player, and Carl Angle, I think his name was the vocalist during the time of the Blind album, which is why you still see Carl Angle's Corrosion of Conformity going around doing the Blind album in full. Right. Just get over it and move on, mate. Come on, you did one album 8 years ago. Leave it alone. But I think that's why you get these little pieces that come through from there. And that's why Heaven's Not Overflowing is a great way to bring into the album, because it gives you familiarity of the stylization. Because can you imagine if they got in straight off with Broken Man, they'd be like, whoa, hang on. Yeah, Vote with a Bullet's a good segue into that, but this is very much a different album, and you're coming in really slow and heavy straight off. They come in nice and fast, and then they go straight into the second track, Albatross, which is full on sludgy doom. It's a great track. So yeah, I love it. Do you know what? Some of the riff reminds me of like Aerosmith style guitar riffing, hard rock.
Yeah.
Heaven on a Slow Flame. But yeah, what was your thoughts on the opener?
Yeah, they're straight into the fuzzed out stoner rock, aren't they? And it has got the weight of Black Sabbath running through it. The southern tinge voice is really at the centre of the mix here from Pepper Keenan, and I think they're quick to reach the chorus of a song that stretches for 5 minutes. I was surprised how quickly.
They're like under a minute, aren't they? They're in it.
Yeah, and they're already there. And good use of half-time in drums, though, to make that the main ritual point of the song. I think the transition to the solo, I think it's 2 minutes 45, around that mark. Unashamed rock and roll posturing, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But as with any decent stoner rock song, you can appreciate the rhythm guitar as much as the lead during the fretboard flamboyance. Good start to the album. I'll just pick up on Albatross. I know it's the lead single, probably the second most famous song in the catalogue after Vote with a Bullet. I think it's the one song on here which is 100% Black Sabbath from the Master of Reality.
Oh yeah.
It's the only song where he even sounds like he's getting in the range of Ozzy Osbourne as well. But love the drum engineering on this. But I know that's everyone. They always play that in the set. Doesn't stand out for me on this album, Albatross, surprisingly.
I think that's one of those problems with Albatross. To me, when I wasn't ever listening to any form of doom, stood out for me. When you listen to a lot of doom bands, it doesn't stand out anywhere near as much because it's unapologetic classic doom, and it doesn't have any of the other elements that make Corrosion for me who they are. We've already talked a little bit previously about the Pearls Before Swine anyway, so let's move on to talk about musicianship of the band and overall songwriting here. This is a tricky one. This was the hardest question I had to think about on here one, because I was like, I know this album, I've listened to this album for 20 odd years or whatever it is now, since it came out, and so this just feels normal to me. This just feels like it's what I just expect musicians to do. But I think what's interesting for me on this one is this album doesn't feel like one-dimensional genre all the way through. Like, so when we talk about metalcore, for instance, and we talk about some metalcore bands, and you get a metalcore album, we're like, well, it was 8 songs that all sounded pretty much the same. And then you look for the one that had the hookiest chorus. You're like, okay, here's a chorus. Oh, he's got clean vocals kicking in. Okay, brilliant. Right, and then they're going to have a breakdown at this section, blah, blah, blah. You couldn't get that with this album. There is so much variety on this. This is like Quality Street going on here. This is a Quality Street tin full of variety in here. Yeah, there's a couple of crappy coffee creams in there that people don't like, but there is a lot to go in there. Like Signor Limpio is just all over. I mean, it's a really interesting track. It's completely off their normal groove stoner rock vibe. We've got those interlude sections that came out probably more by accident. I think if they'd had a full band going into writing this album, those interludes would not be on this album at all. And I think the overall vibe of the album would be very different because they would have written the album in a much short period of time. So I think we'd have had a more consistent approach to it, which is what we got on other albums. So when you look at later albums that came out, the albums feel more concise. They all have a very definitive flow of songs or styles. So you listen to it and you're like, they all sound like they're from the same album. This one feels like there's a whole load of different stuff going on. Specifically like something like the song Deliverance, which has got Mike Dean on vocals. This song doesn't sound like anything else on this album. It's got a completely different vibe on it. And it's almost like when Mike came back in, they were halfway through writing. They're like, okay, we'll give you a song then. And he's just brought in this idea and they're like, fuck it, yeah, let's go for it. But I actually really like that. I like the songwriting on this album. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the musicianship, the main thing that stands out, the vocals.
Yeah.
Very confident for a man who's actually taken over the microphone midway through. So like you said, the hemorrhaging money for Columbia Records, they've got 6 months to write a record and there's a chance that they might not come out with anything. So thank you for giving me the background on the interludes, which I agree enhance the album. and that does make sense. But let's not forget the quality of the riffage on this album. Admittedly, it is, once you know your blues scales, you can probably come up with 50 riffs, but the 15 that they produced, there's a lot more thought gone into them, isn't there? So yeah, the musicianship, we were expecting it to be strong, although when it's a band from a hardcore background, you're not expecting there to be any virtuoso moments in there. I mean, there are some really tasteful blues solo in here, and quite a few tempo changes, which are really quite ambitious on it. So that's really good. I mean, yeah. I mean, what would you say about the audio production though on this? Do you think, considering it came out in 1994 on a major label, do you think this is still cutting edge?
It sounds like it came out in the mid-90s, but I think it also came out from the sound of the grunge production era. So there was definitely more of a... I mean, this would have been... I'm guessing this would have been analog, probably less likely than it was digital at this point.
It would have been.
Which means you still get that nicer analog tone. It wouldn't have been as crisp. I think if they'd done it now, I don't think you get the same vibe off of it. I like the vibe off of this, the 90s production, and what I like about it is you can hear everything. You can hear the bass in there. I think it's a really good balanced mix and a balanced production. It's never been I think a good idea of a production run is when you listen to an album and you never think about the production, you know it's good production.
Yeah.
When you're having to go, I can't quite hear this, or that's a bit over the top, or the vocals were a bit loud in this mix, then you know production's fucked. If you've never thought about it, and I've never, until we asked that question, what I think about it, have ever thought anything about the production on this album, which means to me it was a well-produced album.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's a great period, isn't it? If you're on a major label and you're playing metal, alternative rock, you're going to have a big budget behind you, and the audio engineering is world class, isn't it? I think with this, the last song, we mentioned it many times, Pearls Before Swine captures the finest qualities of the production. Chalky bass, fuzzed out guitars, crystal clear drum snares, ubiquitous vocals. So I think it has. I think if this came out now, you'd still be saying, whoa, great production, good instrument separation in the mix. The key question though, which is stronger for you, side A or side B?
We should reference that for anyone who's going, what you on about side A, side B? So back in the day on vinyl, or on tapes, you would have had the album split into two halves. So it depends. So there's what's stronger and what I prefer. So stronger as far as musical accessible tracks, I think side A, or the first 7 songs, have got your biggest hooks, have got your most radio friendly tracks, are going to be the stuff that I would have used for promotion. As far as interesting tracks, for me is side B. So when you talk about Shelter, Shake Like You, Deliverance, Migraine, Pearls Before Swine, they are far more interesting to see them. It's almost like they've got all their, what would be cast as the cliched rock vibe stuff out in the first half, and they went second half of the album, they're like, let's go a little bit, bring some of our hardcore influences in, stuff for like Migraine, and just was starting to just experiment a little bit more. So I find listening to the second half of the album more interesting for me, but I do think from a commercial point of view, the first half of the album is better.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Side A is superb. Side B threatens to be a bit of a slog from track 10 to track 13, but they do keep you engaged with Shake Like You at track number 12, and then obviously the superb Palette Cleanser, track number 13, Shelter. So I really like how there's more variation in side B, but this is an album of 54 minutes, 14 songs. Admittedly, 3 of them are interludes. So it is quite a long journey, and I think they're quite successful in keeping you on board for side B. But side A, the first 7 tracks, I would say, are the strongest of the two. But I mean, the question is, if we're going to do this for all our reviews of classic albums, has the album stood the test of time? What's your opinion on that?
Fuck yeah. Done. That's it. There's no debate in it. I mean, the thing is classic rock, classic metal will never go away. No matter how many people say like music's died, etc. I think in the world which is absolutely saturated with over-perfectionist metalcore, deathcore bands. I mean, when I look at some of the lineups for festivals and I see clips, people post the clips of the gigs from the festival stages. There are loads of bands I've never heard of. I'm like, they all sound like the same band to me now, because they're all going. We need to be. They're almost like there's a mantra between the bands now, which is we've got to be heavier than the other band, and we've got to get more circle pits and walls of death in, and have the dirtiest breakdown. I'm like, if every band does that, then it's not really a cliche. It's good for the band. It's good for the fans, because then they get that on every gig. They get to do a wall of death, and it's like, yay! But I don't see a lot of these bands getting far past what Hatebreed were doing a while back. I mean, when you talk about hardcore bands and stuff like that, when you think about, like, I heard the most recent Biohazard single came out, I'm like, that is fucking classic 90s Biohazard on their new stuff, and I'm like, I fucking love it, because it's stripped back and it's gone back to what that genre was all about, and I'm glad of that. So when I do listen to some of the new albums that come out, and I just go back to this sort of thing and go, this is good songwriting. It's not got any pretension about what they're trying to do for an audience. And I think a lot of bands do think about that. They go, when we're writing this song, what's that going to do for the audience? What's that going to do for the crowd? Are we going to get a pit out of it? We talked about the recent gig with Backseat Juliet, and they were talking about, and how many times they were talking about crowd engagement and bits in their song. Don't write songs with crowd engagement in mind. You write songs for the songs. For me, that's why this album absolutely stands up. It stands up actually more than their recent albums for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see this album getting a mention as an influence on the stoner metal scene, because that's probably where it is now in the family tree. I'm surprised. It's still always Caius, Fu Manchu, obviously going back to Black Sabbath. Then you've got bands like Sleep and even Thou, but that's a lot more aggressive. But I think you've got to say the commercial success brought this type of music closer to the mainstream than ever, and for a short period of time it was the pinnacle of alternative culture, wasn't it? You know, MTV were behind it. Would I listen to this if it came out today from a new band? No. Does any other group do it better? Perhaps you might make a case for Orange Goblin or Caius's 1992 album, because it's a classic of its genre. Yes, it stands up. It's been ripped off so many times, and probably without being mentioned, people just lazily, myself included, just think, oh, you've listened to Master of Reality, this great 1971 Black Sabbath album. This is not a stoner metal album, I'll make it clear. It's just that it's had an influence on the evolution of that genre from the mid-90s onwards. I just don't hear it mentioned enough. But it has stood the test of time. It's that great period where major labels were signing up bands like Agnostic Front, Cop Shoot Cop, Helmet, Cancer, the death metal band. So they were taking a lot of risks, surprisingly. And here's one that was a success, as we said in the intro. It eventually became a gold record. So what's your verdict out of 10 then?
So for me, this would be an 8 out of 10 ranked album. So it's the reason there's a couple of tracks in there that feel superfluous. They don't really kind of sit in there well within the mix. And I find the album as a whole too long. So if this had been a 10 track, got rid of 4 of the things, maybe get rid of 1 or 2 interludes, maybe kept Without Wings and dropped a couple of other tracks, this would have been a 10 out of 10 for the scene. And I agree from the point of, from a point of, does it stand up? For me, this is an album that everyone should own to understand the genre and the scene. If you're going to own a Corrosion Conformity album, this is the album to own, for me. You could get Wise Blood, you could get Blind, but you're only going to get a part of that journey. This gives you a real cool idea, because if you listen, when you talk about Pearls Before Swine, that could have come off their most recent album. It's got the vibe, so they've used, on each of their further albums later on, they've used elements that appear in this album. But on later albums, they don't have some of the elements that also appeared on here. So this is a really good way of understanding some of their early stuff to their later stuff and getting a good kind of middle ground. So it's that breakthrough album for me of, if you're going to start someone on a band, this is the one you get them into. Don't try them on one of the others to start with. Then if they like this, they'll then start to like other parts of the album. If you went to their most recent album and you're a Doom fan, you'll probably love Corrosion Conformity for the Doom stuff, but you will not like a lot of their other catalogue. Because it's not the same. It's very Doom on the most recent one, very stoner Doom. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for me on this one.
Yeah, there is a precedent for that, isn't there? You know, they started out as a crossover band and then they turned into like a southern rock tinged stoner Doom band. avant-garde metal group Neurosis started out as crossover, and then they're credited with pioneering post-metal, aren't they, which is like atonal doom metal, very experimental. So these have done something similar. It's like you wouldn't normally put those genres together, how they've evolved. 7 out of 10 for me. I think for its impact, probably an 8 out of 10. Also, it's great to see that it went gold and that a major label was taking such a risk signing this band, and that, as you said, 2 of them had left by the time they went into the studio. So the backstory is just as interesting, and that should influence you on your overall verdict. I think the quality of the music's not in doubt, just a bit too long. I agree. If this was 10 songs, oh no, even just 12, probably 12 they got away with. Keep at least 3 of those interludes, and it would easily have been an 8 out of 10. So thank you for introducing me to this album. I've not heard it before.
And one thing I would say, so the next album, Wise Blood, was they went more commercial with it, which isn't a bad thing, but they really doubled down on the Clean My Wounds vibe and stuff like that, which also got them the opening slot for the Metallica tour, where they were doing the Cunning Stunts videos in that era of 1997 Cunning Stunts era. So it was a great step up, but also I think there's possibly they may have had a bit of a backwards knock in the same sense, because it almost felt like, because Pepper Keenan was a good friend with James Hetfield. James Hetfield appeared on the Wise Blood. It was almost like, okay, you're getting a one-upmanship here. It's almost like you haven't earned this right to go off and be the opening band for Metallica on their tour. So I think they actually got absolutely destroyed on the Wise Blood one, because they changed their style from being the hardcore stoner to being a more commercial hard rock band. And they got suddenly this prestige of going out, and James Hetfield appeared on their album. So I know a lot of people, when I spoke to them at the time, they were like, yeah, they're only there because they know James Hetfield, he's a mate of his, he's got him on the tour. Which just sucks for them, because it absolutely destroyed their whole momentum. I think if they'd gone out and just done the Wise Blood and done Commerciality and not done the Metallica tour, they'd have done so much better.
Imagine if they'd have done the Soundgarden tour. For that, we thought it was a swan song at the time, that 96 Soundgarden album, pretty on the upside. That would have been ideal, wouldn't it?
It would have. You also got to remember, though, dropping out something like Wise Blood in 1997, right when nu metal is at its peak. Doing a grungy stoner stuff at that point was a death knell for bands, and that's really what... If they'd been a few years earlier and dropped Deliverance 2 years earlier, and everything had just lined up, but everything just came a bit too late. And we see that a lot with a lot of bands. When I interviewed Cormac Battle from Curb Dog, exactly the same problem. Dropped on the Turn album at exactly the wrong time. Would have been brilliant if they dropped it a year earlier, but the whole music scene had switched, and nu metal was basically killing everything. Record labels did not want to know you and wouldn't promote you, and that's exactly what happened with Corrosion Conformity. They dropped great albums, but their labels wouldn't promote them because they weren't nu metal. And that's what killed them. But Deliverance. Excellent. Well, if you enjoyed our video today, please do like, share and subscribe, and we will see you on the video sometime very soon. Take care.